This is Nana Hosenfeld with the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Thursday, July 18, 2019. Looking at fire potential impacts over the next few days, we are looking at some gusty winds across the area today. We will see winds in the 20 to 30 mile an hour range across the southern part of the Great Basin, combined with low relative humidity. And further north, we're looking at those gusty winds in the 30 to 40 mile an hour range, but relative humidities will be a little higher there, in the 20 to 25% range. Moving into Friday, those gusty winds will continue across portions of Idaho. Again, looking at about 30 to 40 mile an hour winds with relative humidities in the 20 to 25% range. And then by Saturday, things will be pretty quiet with no significant impacts expected. Over the past 24 hours, there's really not much in the way of precipitation across the Great Basin and no lightning observed. Fire activity continues to increase across the area. Observed precipitation has been pretty sparse over the past 7 days. You can see from the image on the left, there's really hardly been any precipitation to speak of. Looking at the past 30 days, you can see it's also been quite dry over the 30-day period. ERCs are on the rise, especially across southern Utah. Typically this time of year we'd be receiving monsoonal moisture down there, but that has not really happened yet, and so those ERCs are pretty high across the south, a little lower across the north where things have stayed cooler. And just I thought it would be interesting to compare to last year's ERC chart. At this time, you can see how green those ERCs were further south. And just looking at those side by side, again, you can really see the impact of monsoon last year compared to this year, how things are much, the ERCs are much higher across the south. And then just continuing to look at ERCs again, you can see GB35, which includes southern Utah and the Arizona Strip, is almost at record levels. Further north, ERCs are much lower. Looking at live fuel moisture, almost across the entire Great Basin, we are looking at live fuel moisture, sagebrush moisture that's at or above normal as far as moisture for the time of year. And we have received reports that in many areas, when fire gets to the sagebrush, it does slow that fire down. Looking at 10-hour fuel moisture, you can see that those fine fuels are really quite dry across the area. And again, driest across the southern part of the area where it has been abnormally dry. Satellite this morning shows a low pressure system in place across far to the north of the Great Basin. So looking at today's weather pattern, you can see that really dry air in place across the southern part of the Great Basin and some gustier winds further north. Looking at our significant fire potential map, we have no high risk issued. Yesterday we had originally issued high risk for southern Utah for today, but we didn't really see much reports of impacts from the winds yesterday, so we went ahead and took that out for today. Continuing to look at today's weather, you can see those gusty winds, again in that 25 to 35 mile an hour range across portions of southern Utah. Relative humidities, however, across southern Idaho will be in the 20 to 25% range. Moving into Friday, pretty similar weather pattern with that dry air in place across the Great Basin. You can see relative humidities come down a bit tomorrow. And we are looking at another day of those gusty winds across southern Idaho, again in the about 25 to 35 mile an hour range, depending on where you are. Moving into Saturday, we start to see high pressure build across the area. This will lead to an increase in temperature across the Great Basin and a decrease in the relative humidity. We're looking at much lighter winds on Saturday, as you can see from the image on the left, with really low relative humidities, especially across the south. Over the next 3 days, little, if any, precipitation is expected across the area. Looking at Sunday, you can see high pressure increasing across the Great Basin. As we move into Monday, that high pressure will start to draw some moisture northward into the area. That's some monsoonal moisture that we've been waiting for quite a while to see. You can see the lightning risk associated with that monsoonal moisture. So typically, at the very beginning of that moisture surge, we will see some drier lightning before that moisture has time to deepen and really bring the wet thunderstorms. So this beginning push of the monsoon is usually a problematic time with the lightning that accompanies it and the dry fuels. So in the Sunday and Monday time period, again, this is when we're starting to see that monsoonal moisture make its way into the area, just starting to see precipitation across the southern part of the Great Basin. Moving into Tuesday, you can see quite a bit of moisture in place across the Great Basin. And again, we have highlighted much of Nevada southwestern Idaho and into Utah with that concern for the lightning associated with that monsoonal moisture. Then moving into Wednesday, keeping that monsoonal moisture in place, but no high risk issued for that lightning, just as we will have seen a few days of that moisture in place and things hopefully at that point beginning to moisten up. And you can see those areas that have turned from brown to yellow on the map with that monsoonal moisture. So on Tuesday and Wednesday for precipitation accumulation, again, you can see greater accumulation in those areas. And then looking at the 7-day precipitation accumulation across the area. Again, you can see the impact of that monsoonal moisture moving into the Great Basin. Finally, the 8 to 14-day outlook, the Climate Prediction Center they're looking like we will keep that monsoonal moisture in place. You can see that large green bullseye over the Great Basin, and we are looking at above normal temperatures in that forecast, and that will take us through the end of July. That's it. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Our information is on the screen.